Young or old, male or female, almost everyone has heard of Pokemon. Nintendo's hit franchise has invaded our home since the 90s, and unlike other series that have left after a certain time, the franchise has made your home its home and taken up permanent residence. There's video games, an anime, manga, books, trading cards, and the list goes on. And the great success of Pokemon can be credited to Satoshi Tajiri, the father of Pokemon. With the help of video game studio Game Freak and some really incredible marketing, Pokemon has become the second most successful and lucrative video game based media franchise in the world, behind only Nintendo's own Mario franchise. And due to how big of a franchise Pokemon is, in this season opening episode of Game Facts, we're going to cover the origin of the franchise and Generation 1. It all started in 1996 when Nintendo would release the first installments, Pocket Monsters Red and Green, in Japan, with Blue being released later in the year as a special edition. They were later released as Red and Blue in North America, Europe, and Australia. Pokemon Yellow, a special edition version, was released roughly a year later. The concept of the Pokemon saga stems from the hobby of insect collecting, a popular pastime which game designer Satoshi Tajiri enjoyed as a child. Over time, Tajiri put his idea of catching insects into practice, and with the help of Ken Sugimori and friends, he formed Game Freak. Game Freak was originally born from a fanzine Tajiri wrote and edited at 17, and focused on the arcade game scene from 1981 to 1986. Eventually, Tajiri and Sugimori evolved the magazine into the video game development company Game Freak in 1989. Tajiri first conceived the idea of Pokemon in 1990. Upon learning about the Game Boy and the Game Boy Link cable, Tajiri imagined virtual insects and animals being transported via the wire. Tajiri pioneered the idea of connectivity between handheld game consoles by suggesting that Game Boys could use its link cables in order to have friends do more than simply play against each other. Tajiri was also heavily influenced by the Ultraman fantasy television show, Ultra 7, in which the protagonist used giant monsters contained within small capsules. These two sources helped Tajiri develop the idea for a new game called Capsule Monsters. After many failed attempts at pitching the idea, Tajiri's new friend Shigeru Miyamoto pitched it to the company. Unfortunately, Nintendo just did not picture the concept, but still decided to explore it. The game's name was also changed from Capsule Monsters to Pocket Monsters due to some trademarking issues. It would take 6 years to produce Pocket Monsters Red and Green, along with some mentoring by Shigeru Miyamoto. In that time, Game Freak almost faced bankruptcy and barely had enough money to pay its employees. In fact, 5 employees quit and Tajiri did not take a salary. Investment from Creatures Inc. allowed Game Freak to complete the games, and in return, Creatures received 1/3 of the franchise rights. Pokemon games are rather simple to follow. In the Generation 1 releases for the Nintendo Game Boy, the player controls the main character from an overhead perspective and navigates him throughout the fictional region of Kanto in a quest to become a Pokemon Master. The goal of the game is primarily to beat all 8 gym leaders, then the top 4 Pokemon trainers in Kanto, the Elite Four. The secondary objective is to complete the Pokédex and capture all 150 Pokemon in the region. In order to get all 150 Pokemon, however, it is necessary to transfer Pokemon between both Red and Blue versions. Both titles are independent of each other, but feature the same plot and characters. Pokemon Yellow version was the exception, however. It was meant to resemble the Pokemon anime series, with the player receiving a Pikachu as a starter Pokemon and the rival starting with an Eevee. After more than $50 million were used to market the games, both Pokemon Red and Blue were received extremely well by foreign audiences and helped cement the Pokemon brand in every household. On Cinnabar Island, if you don't have the key to the gym with you, there is a small glitch you can perform. First, use Surf on the right hand side of the island and move upwards until you're across from the door. Get off your Pokemon and walk until you're in front of the gym door, where you'll get the message about it being locked. Look up and you'll see an old man on the roof while this text is displayed. The old man, who was laid down protesting his lack of a morning coffee in the localized version, is actually passed out from drunkenness in the Japanese version. You would have to bring him coffee in order to sober him up. Red and Blue's default names in the game's coding are Nintendo and Sony, respectively, a reference to Nintendo's rivalry with Sony in the gaming industry. There is a glitch where the player can fish in large statues found in gyms and Indigo Plateau, even being able to catch Pokemon. You can find Magikarps with the old rod, Poliwags and Goldings with the good rod, and Krabbies, Psyducks, and Goldings with the Super Rod. The Super Rod only works in the Cerulean City Gym. You can also surf on these large statues, but no Pokemon will appear while surfing. The 3 legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, are puns on elements as well as numbers in the Spanish language. Articuno is Arctic and Uno. Zapdos is Zap and Dos. And Moltres is Molten and Tres. This is also the order that they appear in the National Pokédex. When you encounter your rival in Pokemon Tower, he will ask you why you're in the tower to begin with, because you don't have any dead Pokemon to mourn over. This implies that he has lost a Pokemon and has come to pay his respects to lay it to rest. Furthermore, his Raticate from the previous battle on the SS Anne is replaced by an Execute, Growlithe, or Gyarados, depending on the starter Pokemon you chose. Common fan speculation states that the Raticate died from wounds received from the battle on the SS Anne, and Blue was not able to reach a Pokemon Center in time to save it. In the Pewter Museum of Science in Pewter City, there is an attraction featuring a space shuttle. In red and blue, the plaque accompanying the space shuttle model reads Space Shuttle Columbia. However, in the Generation 3 remakes, the plaque simply reads Space Shuttle. This is probably due to the fact that on February 1st, 2003, the real Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated upon re-entry during its 28th mission, killing all 7 crew members. There's evidence to suggest that Ditto is a failed clone of Mew. Both Pokemon are genderless, weigh the same, their base stats are exactly the same in every respect, they share almost identical colors, and they're the only 2 Pokemon who learn Transform naturally. Ditto can also be found commonly in the same cave as Mewtwo, as well as the mansion on Cinnabar Island where experiments on Mew were said to take place. Pokemon is fast approaching its 20th anniversary, and as of March 31st, 2013, the series has sold over 245 million units. Guinness World Records awarded the Pokemon series 8 records in their Gamer Edition 2008, including most successful RPG series of all time, game series with the most spin-off movies, and most photosensitive epileptic seizures caused by a TV show. Yes, that last one is real, and in 2004, Pocket Monsters Red and Green were remade for the Game Boy Advance system. Everything remained the same in the remake, but with several important upgrades that would bring the games up to speed with other Generation 3 video games. If you enjoyed this video, why not hit that like button right there, and stay up to date with ZenVG by subscribing to this channel and following us on our social media sites like Twitter.